just want to say thanks for the smooth flight.
Right.
I have one question. Is there like a specific angle of downward tilt you have to fly at to
3 degrees.
3 degrees for the curvature of the Earth?
Oh, for the Earth?
Because,
No, we just fly over the troposphere.
Really?
Yeah,
Do you have to keep like kind of going down because?
No, we actually have to nose up. It flies.
Really? Because I was reading some stuff on the flat Earth that made a lot of sense. Have you looked into it?
This one?
I was reading a lot of stuff on the flat Earth.
Okay, yeah. True.
It's true?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. Hey, God bless, brother.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
I was an airline pilot for Delta for 26 years. A pilot's primary flight instrument is his artificial horizon, which he has to be maintained level to keep from climbing and descending. From a cockpit, weather permitting, I could see hundreds of miles in all directions, viewing cities connected by roads across the flat plain as far as the eye could see.
If a pilot is flying around the curve of the Earth, then he should be dipping the nose down, and every 5 minutes he should be dipping the nose down to stay around the curve. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface.
Hey guys, how you doing? My name's Nathan Roberts, and I'm the author of The Doctrine of the Shape of the Earth. And you guys can check out my website for more information at flatearthdoctrine.com. I've also released the Kindle edition of my first children's book called Earth is Flat Like a Mat. There is a disinformation campaign against myself on Amazon. You'll be able to see the difference, though. You can also check out my video that I go into details and to discuss that disinformation campaign against my book. So tonight, I'm so thankful. This is the second time that I've been able to do an interview with Brother Rob Taylor. He is a born-again Christian. He loves the Lord. But furthermore, he also is a commercial pilot, as well as he's worked as an U.S. embassy officer. I believe he knows around 7 or 8 languages. He's working on a PhD. He graduated from West Point. And on top of that, he also believes that the Earth is flat. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rob. Is that correct? Do you believe the Earth is flat?
I don't believe anything that I can't show and demonstrate. I can more appropriately stated, I can show you evidence that the Earth cannot be a globe.
Okay, well, before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background, your education, as well as your career?
Okay, sounds good. I've been studying political, military, economic, social, cultural, and religious factors since 1991. I lived in Korea for 2 years. I speak the Korean language fluently. Following that, I joined the military, went to West Point as a cadet officer. 4 years there. I studied engineering, physics, and engineering project management at West Point, meaning I got the entire basic engineering background knowledge of West Point. Okay. Physics, I've studied basic physics at the advanced level at West Point. So that's like a double layer of advanced on that physics class I took. Then the next semester was electromechanical physics. Okay, and then later on, once I went into my engineering project management, I studied engineering physics. So there's 3 layers of physics right there. Okay, and then I studied a lot of design, project management design. Okay, so then from there I went into the physics of flight, Army Flight School, Rotary Wing Flight School. Okay, so I've got all my basic physics, and then I've got the physics of flight on top of that. So then I served 9 years as a flight officer, aviation officer, and I could talk about that. Multiple beautiful experiences in flying, and then other experiences as well, as everybody has. And then from there, I migrated into the embassy officer component of the United States military, and I have, through part of that, I obtained 2 master's degrees, one in geostrategic analysis, and the other one is in regular civilian political science. In all, though, I served for 10 years as an embassy officer. I've touched 18 different countries in Africa, meaning I've set foot in 18 countries. And I've lived in Africa 18 full months. Okay, so that being said, I already spoke Korean. I got the highest grade in Russian when I studied Russian at West Point. Because I already knew Korean, I got the highest grade in Russian. I mean, A plus. I got the highest A plus of all the of the 2 or 3 A pluses. Okay, so I speak from there. I taught myself Spanish. Then the military sent me to DLI to study French and then Portuguese. And from there I went to Mozambique, where they speak continental Portuguese, not Brazilian Portuguese. So I know both Brazilian Portuguese and continental Portuguese. While I was in Africa, I learned Swahili, Lugandan, and Acholi, which are Eastern African trade languages. Swahili is an Eastern African trade language. So that being said, there's my language studies. There's my political military economics, and I'm also studying a PhD now in political economics. Imagine that. So once I get that, I'll have the political, military, and economics all studied at the graduate level with the PhD included in there. So I'm looking forward to that. Just for the personal knowledge. I'm not doing it for any career advancement. I'm doing it for my own advancement so I can learn and study all these things. That being said, how did I come into flat Earth? Well, my buddy shamed me into it. I have a buddy in Houston, Texas. His name is John, and he'd love to watch this thing. But I convinced him that Abraham Lincoln was a dictator of a president, and I showed him that the Civil War in this country was not a civil war, but it was not a war of the North against the South. It was a war of the bankers against the citizens of this country. And his name being Lincoln, he didn't necessarily like that. Everybody thinks Abraham Lincoln saved the Constitution and everything else, but that couldn't be a bigger lie. It's as big a lie as the globe Earth is. Abraham Lincoln was a dictator president, and every president since him has been a sham and a shyster president. We lost our government, in other words, in 1860. Okay, that being said. So John told me this. I initially, because I'm a pilot, I'm a commercial pilot, by the way. I do have a commercial rating. So when I heard that my buddy John telling me about flat Earth and all the different, and a few of the different factors involved, I would not listen to it. I said, John, that's craziness. You think I'm going to say something like that and look like a fool? Well, here's what John eventually told me. John told me, he said, Rob, you convinced me that Abraham Lincoln was a dictator of a president. The Civil War shouldn't have happened. And by the way, World War I and World War II were both banker wars as well. John convinced me of that. He told me, Rob, you convinced me of that. And he told me this. He went forward and he said, Rob, if you want to remain a slave, then continue ignoring the flat Earth. However, the contrary statement of that is, if you want to wake up and learn about real world history, then you will study flat Earth. And when he said that, I thought to myself, I have dedicated my whole career, the last 27 years, to finding truth. Now, when he told me that I would remain a slave to the matrix unless I looked at flat Earth, that's when I did my legitimate research. And literally it took me about 5 minutes. It only took me 5 minutes when I compared what I know, and I mean my scientific knowledge of physics and flight and attitude indicator and everything else. When I started analyzing what the flat Earth community has to say, the flat Earth reality, as soon as I took a genuine look at it, I never went back. And I realized this is absolutely true. And I've been lied to my whole life. There's the simple truth of it.
Man, haven't we all?
Yes, sir. So therefore, I just described to you 22 years of formal schooling, 2 master's degrees, and flight instruction. And I was lied to the entire time. And it's amazing.
I got a question, Rob. During your flight testing and your studying, and as well as your experience in flight, did it ever cross your mind that you were not living on a spinning ball? Did it ever cross your mind once? Did you question any of it? No.
Not once. Never questioned it. And to tell you the truth, they carefully conceal it. They never even bring it up. And you know what? I remember there were a couple times in class, in the classes, because I was in the class with 20 or 30 other Army lieutenants, right? We're learning about flight. There were a couple times when somebody brought up the attitude indicator and asked them about the curve of the Earth. That came up once or twice. Now I remember it in my head, right? But you know what happens? The instructor doesn't know how to deal with it. And the answer is, well, it probably just happens. It just has to happen that way. They don't have an answer. They just gloss over it. And nobody knows enough. Nobody has the presence of mind. We really don't know enough to even talk about it. The powers that be have so well concealed the flat Earth concepts that nobody even asks the question. We don't even ask the question.
Right. Yeah, I
So-
agree. I agree. Okay. So I
Roger
have
that.
another question for you then. So for those who are skeptical about living on a ball-shaped Earth, though haven't yet embraced flat Earth, can you please explain how flight paths work on a flat Earth?
Very simple. Let's say I'm going to put you in the pilot seat. Okay, you've done all your flight checks of your engine. All your systems are working. All your button, all your lights are green. All your dials are in the green zone. You're ready to go. Okay, apply your brakes. Throttle to 100%. Now your aircraft's vibrating, ready to go. Release the brakes. Your aircraft's going to launch forward. Pretty soon, I mean, the thing's going to want to take off the ground. Pull back your yoke a little bit. Cruise up. Guess what? You're off the ground in about 3 seconds. Now you're in the air. Now ascend up to your elevation, where your flight elevation, or sorry, your flight altitude, right? And then once you hit your flight altitude, you fly at your same altitude at 36,000 feet for 3 hours, and then you land. Okay? There's one thing that we always do before we take off, and that is to cage the attitude indicator. What that does, it releases that gyro that's in there. We release the gyro, let it spin freely, okay, back to its calibrated with the level runway in front of you, okay? So whenever you're flying, that attitude indicator is reflecting that level runway where we take off, okay? That's what we cage the attitude indicator right there, okay? So forevermore, throughout that flight, when I ascend to altitude and I fly there at 36,000 feet for 3 hours, I'm flying level, the same level that I was on that airstrip when I took off. And by law, no pilot will cage or release that gyro throughout his flight, because that attitude indicator is locked to the flat bearing of the airstrip where he departed. So therefore, now let's just make the association here. For that 3 hours, when I'm flying at 36,000 feet, my attitude indicator is flying level with that airstrip from whence I departed 3 hours ago.
So we'll move on to the next question. Does all aviation assume a flat plane? Any reason not to assume a flat plane during aviation? Whether that's helicopter or airplane?
Well, the answer to that is no, because the whole world assumes the globe. Aviation is no different. The aviation community does not know anything about flat Earth. All they know is what's shoved down their neck in the schools. Okay, and the globe is taught with all navigation. It's all taught with a globe. But guess what? When we do our flying maps, they're all flat. So there's a big disconnect. We fly over a flat Earth, but don't even realize it. I mean, it was to the point where there I was, a dual master's degree holder with all my physics, and my buddy was doing his best to tell me, Rob, the Earth is flat. Here it is. And I scoffed at him. And I was the average aviator. I mean, we have no idea that it's flat. I'll tell you this, I have 2 Air Force pilot buddies. They scoff at me for talking about flat Earth. But the fact is, they cannot talk with me now because I have the physics behind it. They cannot argue the physics, but they will hold on to their little nutshell of an idea. They just won't let it go. It's ego for them. They won't let it go. The one guy, I think he's involved in the high jump mission that flies to the south. I mean, flies to Antarctica once a month. Literally, he flies to Antarctica once a month, but he won't listen to me on the flat Earth. I think he has some secret clearance involved here. That's why he won't talk with me. He won't engage with me on that.
And it might be wise for him. It might be wise for him to do so, and maybe you as well.
Indeed, in that case, that is true. We don't want Big Brother after us because Big Brother has means and ways of doing things, and we don't want people to lose their careers. But the facts remain that the attitude indicator does not change through flight. For 3 hours, that plane is flying at the same elevation for 3 hours. And you and I know that the Earth, if the Earth was a globe, it would have curved away at the rate of 8 inches per mile squared. Okay, After an hour, after more than 10 minutes, he should be flying into space, well above that 36,000 level, 36,000 foot flight elevation. It's
Right.
just simply mandatory by simple geometry. Oh, and by the way, Nathan, I think I've sent you all these proofs that I've done. I've done multiple proofs that show that per sea level, LA, California, and New York City, those are both at sea level, okay? By the globe, simple geometry, the distance midway between those two, but because it's 2,700 miles distance between LA and New York City, if you do the simple math, 8 inches per mile squared, the elevation between those two cities has to be more than 200 miles high, okay? When in reality, the elevation at Kansas City, Missouri is only 900 feet, okay? The simple geometry by simple math, Pythagorean theorem, fails. The globe fails again and again and again. There's simply no evidence of curve anywhere.
So you mean you never had to dip the front of your nose of your plane to account for that curvature?
You hear me laughing. I mean that. No, we do not dip the nose. Let me tell you this. The curve of the earth does not appear in any aviation discussion. It simply does not exist. There, on the contrary, the term the term straight and level, that is the term that describes once we take off and reach our flight altitude, for example, 36,000 feet, which is where most aircraft will fly. I mean, commercial aircraft, 36,000 feet, we fly straight and level, meaning we do our best not to dip the nose. Okay. Right. You see what I'm saying? The average pilot, when we hit autopilot or when we trim up our flight controls, we don't want the nose to dip. We want to maintain that elevation because everybody, this is elementary. If you're losing altitude, you're flying towards the ground, and you don't want that. We've got to maintain our elevation, our altitude when we're flying along. Okay, so to further highlight what you say there, do we dip the nose? No, not only do we not dip the nose, except in combat scenarios or needing to reach down and land somewhere. Okay, we keep the nose level, and actually a plane has to keep the nose elevated a little bit to keep the approach, the wind approach on the wings, the angle of approach on the wing.
It's slightly tipped up. It has to be slightly tipped up.
It's incredible. And now if we follow this discussion here, the dipping the nose is ridiculous. It's not only ridiculous, it's absurd. The flight community even has the specific term in all flight circles, straight and level, meaning you don't turn left or right, and you don't dip up or down. You fly straight at the same altitude.
If there was someone who worked in like missile development, would it be pretty much near impossible for them to design missiles and still believe that they're living on a spinning ball?
Yes, it would. Now you can find a Navy missile instructor on YouTube that confirms the flat Earth.
So this is what I'm thinking.
The Navy's railgun shoots flat Earth. I mean, flat trajectory.
So if someone who, like, let's say worked for Raytheon and had been there for like 30, 40 years and, just been really, really in the mix of missile development, there's no way that they could believe they're living on a spinning ball, right?
You're right. But then again, it depends on what level of analysis he does. Okay. For example, my cousin works for Northrop Grumman Defense Satellites. He'll probably die knowing that he works with satellites. But you and I know satellites are a hoax. They're as much of a hoax as the moon landing is.
Right.
However, the powers that be have science. I mean, I say quotations, science. Okay. They've got it so narrowed down, and people work in such a tight community, they don't see the overall picture.
Yeah.
See where I'm going there?
Like, so compartmentalization.
Exactly. It's all compartmentalized. Nobody sees the entire picture. Okay. Right? Now, if we think that we fly over flat Earth, which we do, and I just proved it to you, imagine what a submarine does. He's closer down there. He has less of a of elevation to work with underneath that water. Submarines are they're more adamant about it than a pilot is, because their flight core or their sailing corridor is that much more narrow. And as you and I know, the surface of water is always flat. As anybody knows, the submarines have a tighter corridor than planes do.
Right.
So they're even more adamant. When you go on YouTube and look at submarine flat Earth, you'll find it all there.
Man, it doesn't look good for the globe. That's all I gotta say.
Well, the globe is dead. The globe never even had life. And Nathan, I learned where the globe got its boost. I learned where globe became mainstream.
Tell me.
And it came with the Church of England. When the Church of England, Henry VIII, broke away from the Catholic, okay, he essentially made his own version of English Catholic. That's what the Church of England is, because he was just rebelling. He was just stepping out of Roman Catholic. But when he created his own church following, what was he going to do? He's going to follow the same Catholic principles, the same dogmatic, dictatorial Catholic principles, just under a new name. Okay, so the original Church of England, the scientists, and I quote scientists, the hoax scientists that brought us Copernicus, Newton, and Einstein, okay, they had been looking, excuse me, the flat Earth went nowhere, okay? Nobody would buy it until the Church of England forced it as dogma.
You mean the globe? You mean the globe? No one would.
The globe.
Okay, because you said flat, but
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant the globe. Nobody would buy the globe because it's patently not scientific. Nobody in the world would buy the globe until the Church of England forced it in the schools and science and in the science textbooks. Why? Because they followed the Catholic model of dictatorial management of everything, church, state, education. That's where the globe became mainstream, is with the Church of England.
Which is extremely telling that they already were scripturally completely lost. Because if they had any idea of the scriptures, even scripturally, they could not have proved the globe. Everything goes against it. There's over 240 plus verses that talk about biblical flat Earth cosmology.